Good afternoon, or rather good evening, everyone, and welcome to our very unique and different webinar today, where I think the topic that we will be talking about is slightly unique and hasn't been spoken about that much during many of the webinars and online chats and meetings happening. So we thought that it was very important to bring this to light, to have an informal, intimate chat about some of the mental health, stress, and emotional issues that many of us are going through at present. So before we begin, just some house rules. Please feel free to drop in any questions, comments, feedbacks in the chat box, and we will ask that to the panelists. If there are any particular panelists that you want to answer the question, then please mention them. I will now ask the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we will move on to the discussion. Yes, can we start with Miranda?
Thanks, Atiya. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here, connected with you all. My name is Miranda Naiman. I am the founder and managing director of Empower, which is a human capital consulting firm that is sort of morphing into more of a lifestyle brand at present, being an aspiring futurist by force. I'm really looking forward to kind of sharing the journey so far, some personal pieces in terms of how I've been coping, but more importantly, how I have made decisions during this crisis and how to still lead the team and keep people united and motivated during this really difficult, challenging time that I don't think any of us have experienced. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Araika, I'm just going according to the screens I'm seeing on my screen.
Okay. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Araika Zawad Hafsa Mkulo. You call me Araika Zawadi Hafsa. I'm a cognitive psychologist and I'm also the founder of Safe Space Group. And what we do is focus on mental health at Safe Space, but more from a building and personal development side, but also for employee development. And so I think like the biggest contribution that I can have in this webinar today is to raise awareness on what we can do to, like Miranda said, keep employee morale high, motivate employees, but also how can we all take care of our mental health during this time? Because these are, like you said, these are not times that anyone is used to. And so, yeah, hope we can all leave here with a more positive outlook, the slightest way.
Great, thanks, Araika. Murtaza?
Thank you. My name is Murtaza Versi. I'm founder and CEO of Noesis Strategic Institute. We help leaders create a culture of performance to build up long-term results. And we bring in a lot of enhance engagement, strengthen relationship, and be together in terms of creating sustainable performance. And I'm thankful for being here, and thank you for having me here today. And I would like to share the leadership journey that I've gone through in running the business, and as well as people around me and how we do that through engagement as well. So it'll be nice to share the journey. Thank you.
Great. So thank you very much, Miranda, Araika, and Murtaza for that introduction and for agreeing to be our panelists today. And thank you to Womenify International for actually bringing us all together to speak about this really, really important topic. I am Atiya Sumar, and I am the head of programs and partnerships at the British Council. So one of the things that I personally have been experiencing, and I would really love to know from everyone else, is that at times like these, we make decisions which we have never thought of in our life, that we would have to make these kind of decisions. And although these decisions are attributed to us, sometimes they're made out of no choice. I mean, it's attributed to us for making a very, very difficult decision. but it is a circumstantial decision. It has already been made for us. We just have to execute it. But the burden of executing that decision, it takes a toll on your mental health, on your emotional health. Sometimes it's accompanied by guilt. So I have been experiencing that during this crisis situation. And to be very honest, I have not experienced this ever before in my life, making really hard and really painful decisions. So maybe, again, I will start with Miranda for this one. Maybe if you can tell us your journey through this really unprecedented circumstances at present.
Thanks, Atiya. It's been an interesting journey of ups and downs. I think the best way I can describe my emotional state, and I said this to the team as well, is like a ping pong ball inside a closed box that's being shaken around and it's just bouncing off the walls of the box. Like 1 minute, I'm grateful to be alive. And the next minute, I'm like, is this a dream? Are we going to wake up from it? And another minute, I'm racked with guilt, and every other emotion in between. I think it escalated quite quickly. I went from full denial, and certainly with regards to the business, in March, we just had no concept of this really affecting us, and it just hit us like a bulldozer, really. I remember it was Monday at 2:00 when the first confirmed case happened in Tanzania. And, we just got email upon email from our clients canceling work that was ongoing, claiming that payments could not be made. It was like we went from 100 to 0 in a matter of hours. And of course, the first order of the day was to look at business continuity. I had 3 priorities. What happens with my people, what happens with cash flow and making sure that we're able to continue, but also what happens with revenue and how do we pivot and look at other sources of revenue during this difficult time. We went through phases. So the first phase was to shut down Inspire, as it was a very public space. This was difficult. It started with forced leave and asking the staff who were there to please not come back. They were on a paid forced leave. For the remaining team, we kept going and we worked on, changing our model of working. Before we went agile and out of the office, the full team was there, but no visitors allowed in, lots of sanitizer and social distancing. And then we got to a point where there just wasn't enough work, and we had to just be real and say, we've got 20 people in this office and it doesn't make sense. And yes, it's a lot of fun and we love being with each other, but this can't work. So we've now scaled down to an agile team of 6. The remaining team are no longer reporting to the office and are on call. Very difficult. The weight of it is knowing that you have so many lives that you are responsible for, and that they are supporting others as well. So my mandate was, there's nobody that will starve. There's no one that will be homeless. How do we make sure we take into account everyone's specific needs? I held one-on-ones with every staff member, figured out their family situation, where they live, what their backup plan was. And everyone, was very, very understanding and grateful for the money that we were still paying, even though people are not there. For me personally, I held it together, and I think I cracked probably 2 weeks ago. I had my first panic attack. I've never had anything like that before. I've never suffered from any kind of mental, I don't know what to say, difficulty. And I woke up in the middle of the night and just could not breathe, and realized that the weight of everything that I was putting on my shoulders and saying, I got this, I cracked. And yeah, that was a reality check. And I think we will talk about later on, you'll ask us about what we're doing to stay in balance. I'm addressing it, exercising, eating better, and just realized if I don't take care of me, there won't be anything left. So it was a harsh wake-up call.
Thanks for sharing that and for really being like open and vulnerable, Miranda. And I would sympathize with you on the issue of never having a panic attack or an anxiety attack. I actually thought that these things can't happen. And I do know somebody who used to go through them, and I would tell them, but how can you be going through something like this? Just breathe, just do this. But because I have underlying health issues, I actually have severe I mean, I end up asking my grown-up kids, do you think I'm going to survive COVID? And, and after that, it's just like, I burst into tears thinking, wow, I have managed things like diabetes so well, and I'm actually going to end up dying because of COVID. So this is a reality. I actually thought that I'm quite invincible and I can take on everything, but this has really hit home, and I'm also suffering from anxiety attacks, which usually happen at night. So I absolutely empathize with that. Murtaza, maybe you can tell us a bit about, some difficult decisions that you have had to make, and the toll that it's taken on you.
Yeah, decisions like this without really having, we make decisions through rationale. And when you get things like this where you cannot have facts, you have facts, but you don't know the facts. It comes in and you have to make those decisions, and it has impact in your business, it has impact in your family, it has impact in your relationship, friendship, it has an impact in your community, and you're looking at yourself and saying, and I'm there the center, because then you're a leader for all these people around you, or you take that responsibility of the people around you, and you want to help them through the journey as well. And then you have to make a decision between what's practical and what's suggested, and then you have people in the surroundings who has a different thought process of saying, no, if I stay home, I'm going to die, so I will go to the mosque. How do you take that decision? And he's an elderly person, and he says, you know what, I will die faster if I stay home than if I go to the mosque. And then you have to come in and make those tough decisions. It really takes a lot of toll in you, but you have to be mindful. You have to be in the presence, and you have to engage with the people around you. I think engagement has helped me quite a bit, even in the workplace discussions. Instead of making those decisions that I have to make, I really involved people around me in making those decisions, and we ended up coming out of it in a structured and acceptable manner, which was really based on being honest, being truthful about the situation, and being clear with them what's happening. So as far as myself is concerned, I had to really lock down myself into a situation and not go to the office and engage with them. What was important for me was not only engage with my workforce, but also engage with my customers, because this is the best time now to engage with your customers to find out how they are doing. And so that has helped me stay afloat, because they have encouraged me and they have supported me in that tough situation. So I had a peer discussion. I have a person that I've appointed personally, without him knowing that he's going to be my person. I'm going to, bounce ideas and bounce thoughts with. So I think having a peer or having someone to talk to at certain position is very important at this moment in time.
Great. Thanks a lot, Murtaza. So did all of this decision making, and some like a very tough decision for an elderly person whose life revolves around the mosque, how did saying no, or did taking these tough decisions, did they affect you, like mentally, emotionally, or it wasn't that bad?
Well, you just have to make up your mind sometime and do it in a nice way that it is understandable, digestible. It is based on values. It's based on rationale, instincts, and you explain those realities, and you hope that they will see light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm thankful that they were able to see it, and they decided, okay, we will remain calm and stay where we are. But again, I understand, putting yourself and understanding or being empathetic about their situation and showing compassion to them it's a tough part to do that on a regular basis, especially when everyone else around you requires the same type of service, right? Being empathetic and being compassionate with them. So it takes a lot of toll. And just like Miranda said, sometimes you wake in the middle of the night and you say, excuse me, I can't sleep. What am I thinking about? And you don't know what you're thinking about. You're just thinking. And then you just, console yourself, have a lot of self-talk, and just manage that situation and try and go back to sleep.
Great. Thanks. Thank you so much, Murtaza. And thank you, Tessin, for appreciating the stories. I think this is what we are here for, is to really hear those real, intimate, personal stories from people who are really having to go through executing their leadership and responsible positions. Once again, to everybody in the audience listening to us, please, if you have any comments, any questions, please put them in the chat box, and we will get the panelists to answer them to the best of their ability. So Araika, maybe you could give us some, shed some light on this from the psychological point of view.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Murtaza and Miranda, for sharing that, because I mean, it was so heartfelt, because I was like, I'm going through the same thing. And I think that when it comes to this leadership mental health aspect, I feel like I'm going through two experiences at the same time, because it's like, on the one hand, yeah, like I do have a company, I do have employees who depend on me, and there's very similar steps that I had taken, like you, Miranda, mentioned, because Safe Space is also like a community-led space. So that was one of the first things that we did, but then also cash flow, clients canceling, the whole situation, like everything unfolding was exactly the same. I went through a whole week of just locking myself in and wondering, how am I gonna do this? Because you have people who are like single mothers working for you, and maybe you might not need them anymore during this time when we take work online, but then what do you do? So there was that element of figuring it out. But from the mental health perspective as well, it's like, you wouldn't go to a surgeon and they tell you that they have the same condition that you have, that they want to operate on you, right? You wouldn't trust them. So being that I do work in the field of mental health, it's insane to me, because I'm going through it as a person on one hand, and then on the other hand, I'm going through it as a practitioner and trying to help people overcome what they're going through. So it's been interesting, and I think I've become much deeper into my profession because of this period of time, because I'm also going through things where I understand them for the first time, not from a textbook perspective, right? Because I'm also getting anxiety attacks. I'm also waking up in the middle of the night. I can't show my clients this, but whatever I tell them, I have to now put into practice, right? Whatever I tell them, cope with, like, let's challenge your thinking, or let's do this. Now I have to do that for myself and realize, like, what are the gaps? Does this actually work? What is this looming thing that's going on around us? How can we look at it from a different perspective? So I do think that when it comes to leadership right now, it's super important for all of us, leaders specifically, to really double back, like really just take a step back and realize that we are human and we are allowed to not have it figured out for once, because even world leaders don't have it figured out. And like, the whole world might be crumbling outside and we can't crumble. Like, we can't. Like we said, there's people depending on us. But if we also try to push, the way this is going, then we're going to crumble. So I would say, from what I've experienced for myself and what I think is most important in terms of just leadership in general and how we can take care of our mental health, is to take a step back from this issue, is to take a step back from our businesses. As much as we are so attached to it, as much as we want to keep it afloat, like, the number one priority right now is keeping ourselves afloat. And if we're not staying sane, there is no business to work on, right? There is no clients to deal with. We have to work on our mental health first. So I think we're going to go deeper into specific things to do later into the video. I don't know, Atiya.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Araika. And I think what you said, that being a mental health specialist and yet going through challenges, I think that really hit me, because yes, I mean, that can be tough because everybody's looking at you for providing that support, for providing that guidance, and thinking, well, a mental health specialist can never go through all this because they know exactly how it works, what is going on, and so they can deal with it. So that will bring me to my next question. There are no questions yet from the panelists, so I'll move on to the next thought that I was having. And when I was discussing this with Diana, that, we want to have this webinar, and I thought, we are told leaders eat last. So everybody is looking up to us, as it is expected from us to make sure that there is smooth sailing for the organization, for all the staff in the organization, for our families, and we are the last one there. We have to ensure everyone's safety, security, continuity. But when we are kind to ourselves, do we come across as selfish? How do we fill our cup first and then take care of all those who are under us, or who are sort of our responsibility? Usually it's easy to fill our cup first, be kind to yourself, and then move on to others. But at demanding times like this, in a crisis like this, you have to do things simultaneously. But sometimes we find out that we have done so much for everyone else who is our responsibility, that in the end we are drained out and we haven't really managed to be kind to ourselves first, to fill our cup first. So, I just want to discuss a bit about that how do we stay centered and grounded and focused and be kind to ourselves and fill our cup as well, when there is not enough time to do both, to be kind to those who are our responsibility and be kind to ourselves as well, when we are, juggling so many different priorities, where everything becomes a priority. So as leaders, and Murtaza, I'll start with you on that one. How do you handle this situation of filling your cup first, but at the same time, making sure that you are there as a support system for those who are under your responsibility as well? Do you sometimes overlook being kind to yourself and, put yourself to the test that, no, I have to do all of this and then I will look at myself right in the end?
Atiya, that's a really nice question. And, in this situation which we are in, I like to relate it to an aircraft crashing. And when an aircraft is crashing, the first thing the cabin crew tells you to do is to put an oxygen mask on yourself and then on the person next to you or your child, right?
Such an awesome
example. So the first thing that we really need to look at is our well-being, because look, if we are leaders and we have to take care of people around us, if we don't take care of ourselves mentally, health-wise, then the people below us will disintegrate as well, because they depend on us as well. So the thing that we really need to do is balance it out. And how do you balance it out? Is make sure that your mind first, and I think this is very important, is your health and both mental health and physical health is in place. Because if that is not there, then you're in a big trouble. So that's the first thing you have to do. And then you have to balance it out between work, because remember now in this situation, it's not only the workforce that depends on you. You have a lot of other people around you that depend on you as well. And it not necessarily depend on you financially, but it could be depending on you on moral support, on ideas, on thoughts, etc. And you have to balance it well to be able to get through that. If you avoid to balance it, you will impact the rest of the people. So my thought and my suggestion is put the oxygen mask in yourself first, make sure you are there, you are able to take care of yourself. And it's not about being selfish. You still serve them. You still become a servant leader. But you can only be that if you can serve yourself first. And once you serve yourself, then you're good to serve. Then you can put yourself all out to serve. That's what I think needs to be done, or that's what we experience, or I experience it myself, that I have to take care of my personal being first.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Murtaza. Miranda, what do you like to share with us? How do you fill your cup as well? Plus make sure that nobody's neglected and you don't neglect yourself as well.
Yeah, it's a major challenge, to be honest. If I look at my history of how I've been living my life, it's been going 100, burning out, going 100, burning out, and that cycle, which is just not sustainable anymore. I think what I do is I look at my life in 4 quadrants, and similar to Murtaza, I am very service driven. I believe in service before self. And so that's why I find it easy to neglect myself by putting family, team and clients and community before myself. Of course, that hasn't paid off in this case. So for business, I mentioned already before that it's very much about putting the team first before yourself. They get paid before you do, and those kinds of things, and making sure their well-being is taken care of. I mentioned before, it's about people, cash flow and revenue, and making sure that's okay. On the family side, I'm actually really grateful that I feel quite positive in this area. This is the most present I've been, dare I say, even the best mother I've been. This is the most involved I've been in my son's education and school. I've actually enjoyed that part, even though it's been challenging. But for family, I'm looking at protection, security, and discipline, and making sure that, things are well planned, and that's extended family as well. My father is, elderly and also has underlying issues, so making sure he's protected. On the community side, it's critical that we think about what we can do. We're in such a position of privilege that we are sitting on this webinar with Wi-Fi streaming in our house. What are we doing for others? Be that in the moment when you drive past someone at a traffic light, or your support staff that might be working in your house, or the Ascari, what are you doing to support others? And what thought leadership are you also putting out there? So that helps to think about how you can serve the community in that way as well. And having a sense of belonging. You don't want to feel alone at this time or isolated. For me personally, post the panic attack, that, yeah, I admit I used to be quite judgmental of such things. I didn't believe they existed. I've put 3 things as my priorities. One is nutrition, making sure I'm ingesting the right things. The second one is sleep. I was not sleeping. I'd become a kind of a night owl, up all night and then sleeping in the morning and then working all night. And that's not healthy. And finally, exercise, which I had neglected for a while. So I've restarted, just mini incremental steps, 7-minute workout, better than nothing. Work up a little sweat. I already feel better and it's only day 5. So yeah, just taking it step by step. And maybe one more thing I can share that's been really helpful. I do something that's called the 10-10-10, which is you get up, you start your day with 10 minutes of just kind of lying there, gratitude, thinking about everything that you're thankful for. 10 minutes of reading something. It could be a book that you have next to your bed, but something positive. And then 10 minutes of journaling. So it doesn't take long, but the 10-10-10 just puts you in the right frame of mind for the day to be able to make decisions from a better standpoint. And I found that has been helpful in softening me and just making me more adaptable to the current, the new normal, I guess.
Great. So I've got 2 very key takeaways from here, which are easy to remember. From Miranda, the 10-10-10, going to start that from tomorrow morning. And from Murtaza, always reminding myself that I have to put on the oxygen mask on myself first. And that's how it works. And, Miranda, you brought up the whole question about thought leadership, and we are in this together, that you're not alone. So I think I just want to use this opportunity to thank you for the brilliant initiative of getting all these leaders, experts in their fields to write the articles. Honestly, they've been something, at least I personally look forward to. on Twitter thinking what's new today. It's also been quite a learning opportunity for me. You know, when you have different thought leaders writing about different things, we are not experts in those fields, but they put it in such a nice, simple, concise manner. So thank you to Miranda and Empower for that initiative. Araika, so I think this is where your knowledge and your expertise will really benefit us, that how can we fill our cup first and not come across as selfish when we have competing priorities?
Yeah, I think definitely Murtaza, what you said, like putting the mask on first, and Miranda, like really being mindful, taking that time to just be aware of yourself and being present is definitely like those two things are maybe the summary of everything that I'm gonna say. But I thought maybe I'll put things into context, being that with my own story, in the sense that, again, when you're working in a field where you're helping people, right, it's so hard to draw boundaries because people usually come to you with a problem, and it's not like a small problem, and you can't be like, look, I'm really tired, I can't help you right now, so book me next week. And you know, I feel like I personally have gone through a really long period of taking on more and more and more, and realize that I'm not even good at what I do if I'm seeing too many people, if I'm trying to help too many people, right? So it's like at the end of the day, like you're not actually helping anyone. You know what I mean? You're just so drained. And I think like the notion of boundaries is something so foreign for collective cultures, right? We just don't really practice boundaries. It's just not a thing. Like boundaries at work, boundaries at home, boundaries with a community. Just, it's always like our lives are so entangled with other people and what people expect from us. And it's almost become this like, it's who you are. It's like your identity is dependent on how good you are to everyone. And if you're not, you start beating yourself up about it. And it's like from the get-go, it was never about that, right? Like it was never about giving. It's you should give because your cup is full, not you should give as an expectation, right? So it's like learning how to get our minds wrapped around that without feeling guilty, because I think that's the issue. Right? It's like, it's not like we don't know these things. It's just maybe COVID-19, the positive side of it is it's removing the guilt, right? Because it's like, well, what can I do? It's coronavirus, so it's not my fault, right? But in reality, that's how we're supposed to be, because people are responsible in many ways for their own emotional well-being, for their own physical, financial well-being. And some people are more privileged than others, but it is a choice that you make, right? It's something that has to come naturally when your cup is full. So the whole like put the oxygen mask on your face, on yourself before helping others, that's how we should all operate. But because we live in cultures that have taught us something else, we feel guilty for doing that. So I think that one of the first things that people should do right now, if you're struggling with that guilt, because I know one of the big issues or one of the questions I get all the time from people who are not in sessions with me are just asking like, I'm home right now and maybe I live with a big family or something like that, and we're quarantined together, and they don't understand mental health stuff, or they don't give me my privacy, or it's like work related, something like that. And I think the number one thing we should all practice when it comes to filling our own cup is learning what healthy boundaries are and how to draw them and how to be very confident in your boundaries. It's not being mean, it's not being disrespectful, it's simply choosing yourself. And we should not feel guilty about choosing yourself, because our morality actually expands the happier and more content with ourselves we are. So the more you choose yourself, the more it is that you'll help other people in a weird way. So instead of putting the other thing first, I think maybe the first thing we need to do is trying to change our mindset around why it's so important to choose ourselves, and understanding that it is not selfish at all, especially when we're going through a crisis that no one understands, that none of us, not a single person. So if you feel like, you need a day where you're not talking to anyone, where you just can't show up, then take that day. Like, it's just, I mean, what's the on the other side of you forcing yourself? Getting a panic attack, right? So, and when you do get a panic attack, it will take you a few more days to pull yourself out of that than if you had taken a day to yourself in the beginning. And so I feel like it's people learning these healthy boundaries is the first step.
Great. Araika, if I could actually give you a hug at this moment, I would give that to you.
Thanks.
But please accept this really tight virtual hug from me. I think, and I'm just going to be really honest here, as a woman, I can relate to this more because we have been taught that whether our cup is full or not, we have to sacrifice and we have to compromise. We are nurturers, we are nourishers, we are caregivers. That's our role, that's our duty, that's our responsibility. So all of that has to come first. And then if you have time, of course, you can look into self-care and help, but make sure that the rest of the family and the house is running well and you come last. So I'm sure there are many men also who are struggling with boundaries and keeping your cup full. But as a woman, I feel that we go through this slightly more. So thank you very much for actually mentioning that, you know, healthy boundaries and not feeling guilty for keeping your cup full, because it's been ingrained in us that you have to sacrifice for your children, for your family, for your husband. How can you be so selfish? You know, why did you do that? Why did you neglect your child? But it comes at a huge cost. So thank you very much for that. And I can see that we have a couple of questions, but I have one last point I would like to discuss, and then we will quickly come to the questions. And Murtaza, I'll start this idea with you. We all know that men and women show their emotions, their vulnerabilities, their so-called weaknesses in a different way. For a woman, it's really easy to confide in her partner or to pick up the phone, speak to a friend, meet a friend, and vent, talk, discuss, and it really eases half of the burden. Whereas for men, they have been conditioned to think that boys don't cry. You have to man up. If you show your vulnerability, you are going to appear weak. You're not going to look man enough. And so you find that even at times like this, under so much pressure, a man has to prove himself that while the world is crumbling outside, I am still standing strong and nothing inside me is moving and shifting. I am there with my whole, you know, manly attitude. I think what we have defined as man really, I think, is a gross injustice to men. So maybe you can shed some light on this, that how do we get men to share and to understand that showing that you are also feeling vulnerable or anxious is really not a sign of weakness?
Yeah, that's a nice tough question for men to answer, because we are macho, we are never weak, we are strong out there. And you know, to be vulnerable is a difficult part for a man. But looking at this situation, I think also those vulnerability are changing. The man showing the macho situation is changing. Why? Because if you look at the moment, and I will take it into perspective in a couple of perspectives. First, if you look at how the world is running in terms of men, women, gender balances in businesses, you find women are coming in more into leadership position, and studies have shown that women are more better leaders than men in terms of emotional intelligence, right? And so women are coming out there to be more sustainable to emotions compared to men, or are good at it. In fact, the studies shows that out of 19 capabilities in terms of emotion and intelligence, 17 women scored high on 17. So, you know, that's one part, right? So the emotional part. So men are feeling that equality or coming into equal level playing field now with women. Your point of saying that women are also required to do more than what men, I think that's also changing at the moment. Because if you look at shutdowns, and I had a friend in Spain who I had a word with, and he had a very high position. And when I asked him how he was handling the situation, being a man as well, he said, well, he's now taking care of the kids when the wife is working. He's doing the mopping, he's doing the laundry, and he's able to show that, you know, he's as scared as anyone else. And this has brought in a lot of learning for us men, that as much as you want to be macho, COVID will take anyone. It doesn't look at how macho you are. And so it's mellowing down our thoughts and opening up. And I think it is about us men being who we are, just opening up, being ourselves, but also being more mindful about things around us, and being able to open ourselves up in a way that we're able to share the vulnerability with people we trust, because trust is the basic stuff that we need as men. So trusting each other, and I think that is coming in, even when you look at organizations. So building trust, and then also being who we are, and just being ourselves. It's very important. And once men realize that, I think that that balance will automatically come in, and we'll be able to solve a lot of issues. A good example, just now we were just discussing with my wife that maybe on Monday we should ask the maid to not to come to work Monday onwards, because I think it's not the right thing to do. And we were asking how we're going to deliberate, or we were deliberating on how we're going to share responsibilities. And I'm very much looking forward to that discussions later after this session, because it's just part and parcel of just doing that now, taking that ownership. It's also leadership. Taking ownership and participating is leadership itself. So, you know, that's coming. It's about engaging with each other and, you know, strengthening that relationship. And if we do that well, we'll be able to come out of this and be open with our vulnerability, and be able to show that we are, as much as we are men, we are as much scared as anyone else.
Great. Thanks. Thank you so much, Murtaza. And yeah, I mean, I can see as an aftermath of COVID that one of the positive things which will come out of this is the sort of change in the perceptions of masculinity and roles and responsibilities. So I'm kind of looking forward to that as well. Yes, Miranda, would you have anything to share on this particular aspect of men and women in the way they show their vulnerabilities and handle such kind of, you know, stressful situations?
I'm smiling because we were joking before we got on the call about if this is the definition of a man. I've got some very masculine qualities. I think, yes, it is difficult sometimes to be vulnerable, but your leadership journey does show you that vulnerability is strength, and that you will connect with people in a more meaningful way if you're able to share your vulnerabilities. And that's something quite new for me. I have a very dark and ugly space that I go to. I call it soldier mode, where I'm like, nothing can touch me. I got this. It doesn't matter what life throws at me. I can just keep going and going and going. And that's not a healthy way to be. I believe for men and for probably women like me, there's always somebody, at least one person that you can let your guard down with. As Murtaza said, that you trust, that you can completely be yourself with. I'm quite an empathetic person, and I'm very self-aware. So sometimes I'll be at work and I know when I get home tonight, I need to have a cry. I know that sounds nuts, like I'm planning it, but I know that I have so much emotion inside that I need to let it out. And I can go home and I can cry, and it's out, and I can carry on with my day. So just making sure that you're releasing that emotion, and that you do have at least one person that you trust with your life, that you're able to snot cry with and completely break down, and know that you won't be judged, and that they have your best interests at heart. So it's a struggle for all of us, women included.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that, because I've just started opening up. It's been 1 year. Before that, I used to write poetry. and it would all be her, she, because I was so worried that someone would understand that she's talking about herself. And there's just actually 1 or 2 people I would read out that poetry to. And 4 to 5 years ago, Medium was still unknown and nobody knew me on Medium. So I published my poetry on there, carefully checking that there's nobody I know. And yet I still have not had the courage to post this on Twitter or Instagram. But yes, it's not all men or not all women. And I totally understand. But the feeling of liberation that I have felt in this 1 year, when I've actually told people my stories and my struggles, and actually being the authentic person, not the person I have to be that society expects from me, or the community expects from me, but my authentic self, I have seen a tremendous growth. It's not easy to be vulnerable. It's a very scary feeling, but it's also a huge growth. I think the growth that I have seen by just being vulnerable within myself, it's been really amazing. So thanks really for sharing your journey as well, Miranda. And I think we'll quickly come to the questions now. And there is one for you, Miranda, from Samir, which says, do you think that entrepreneurs have more stress in this situation than people who are employed?
Hi, Samir. I hope you're well. Thanks for the question. That's a very difficult one to answer because it sucks on both sides in some ways. As an entrepreneur, you have the benefit of being able to have some foresight, particularly financially, to know what you might be able to do. So for us, we're looking at this period in 4-month cycles. And so the employees are told, this is what we're able to do financially for the next 4 months. We review 4 months following. But then on the other side, just to complete, as an entrepreneur, not knowing what's going to happen to your business and whether you'll be able to generate any revenue is extremely worrying, because you're thinking, how am I going to allow my team to survive? We've not put people on 0 salary at all. That is a commitment. People will continue to receive. On the other side, as an employee, I can't imagine what insecurity you must be feeling, particularly if you're not working for a large multinational that is going to bail you out and keep paying you for as long as is needed. If you're working for an SME or an organization that is not financially stable, that is an extremely stressful situation to be in. So I think there are stresses on both sides, and we must empathize with leaders of organizations, but also the people that work for them as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Murtaza. And I'll just come to the next question. As leaders, with all the several news regarding the precautions to take against COVID-19, how do we make sure our people follow the right information to stay safe? So any of the panelists can choose to answer this.
I think the simple answer is you can't force anyone to do anything in particular. Everyone is an adult and has to make the right decisions. You can put policies in place in the office. Unfortunately, we're no longer in the office. But once everyone is out there, it's just about, as an employer, taking responsibility to make sure people are well informed. They are ingesting the right information and not, sucking up fake news or tabloids and gossip, rather than what factually needs to be done to safeguard themselves and their families. But we have a personal responsibility, each of us, to try to find out what is best and how to keep ourselves safe.
Great.
Let me just add to that, if I may, Atiya. What is also happening, noticed that when you shut down completely, people become resilient because they want to come out. And every time you put a rule, they want to break the rule. But when you allow people and give them the facts and allow them to make their own decision and how their decision impact their family and people around them, I notice that people take their own decisions very well. And so it's best to encourage them to take those decisions, give them the facts and guidance, and then allow them to make that decision. that would probably help curb that situation.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Miranda and Murtaza. There is another question here which says, would you advise if, sorry, I'm just, yes, sorry. The question says, are there ongoing checkups to the workers to see how they still take in or their survival due to unpaid leave? So both of you, Murtaza, maybe we could start with you.
Can you repeat that question again? Sorry.
Are there ongoing checkups to workers to see how they still take in or their survival due to unpaid leave?
Yeah, that's a question which a lot of organization, some are doing it, some are not doing it. But I think, like Miranda had said earlier, it is our responsibility as owners of business to be mindful of our people and to be able to check on them on a regular basis on how they're doing and understanding. And rightfully, what she did was to even find out about the family, and that's important, because if you want this staff to stick with, because look, whatever action we do now is going to impact post-corona. If you're going to be taking care, be compassionate about your people, your staff, be compassionate about your customers. Although, you know, our situation in this business is more about credit terms and the stress that it comes with it. But again, it's about checking on them every now and then, and doing whatever you can in a fair manner. And they understand when you become fair and realistic about it. Then that will add a lot of value for your actions now. So it's very important to do the check-in and find out how your staff are doing.
Great. Thank you, Murtaza.
I'll give you a very quick example. I had a customer who had to pay me. And what I did was to call him up to find out. And when he saw my number, he disconnected, like any other business, right? They disconnect your number because they know they have to pay you. And then I called him from another number, and he didn't have that number. He picked up the phone. And I just asked him whether he was okay and if he needed any help. Now, sometimes giving some insights or understanding your connection that can help that customer or that particular staff of yours, that can go a long way to help your business in future as well. So I think it's important.
Absolutely, yeah. This is now reaching out into your network and telling them that you're not there just for the good times, but we are in this together. So whether you can pay me or not pay me, we will, you know, overcome this, and that can start from there, but I'm still here for you. So really, a really amazing point. Thanks, Murtaza. Miranda, would you like to add something?
Sure. I think there are tactical things that we are doing that are working with the team before we got to the point of leave. And just to clarify, it's not unpaid. People are still being paid. We gathered everyone in a room, and as Murtaza said, it was, you know, engaged everyone. This is where we are. This is the percentage of drop in revenue. These are our outgoings. What do we do? How do we make sure everyone's okay? So after those one-on-ones, everyone signed a letter to say that they agreed. And surprisingly, you know, people were saying, we're so overcome that, you know, it's this generous. We thought we would have unpaid leave. We hear other companies that are sending people home with nothing. So that was already something that I did not want to do. In terms of checkups, we have a Friday huddle, which is purely just about well-being. Everyone comes onto Zoom, from myself down to the interns. And we rotate the huddler who runs a game or a quiz online. We've got a super active WhatsApp group. I can barely keep up, but it's like jokes and laughs all day and night. I will add to that. All the employees that are not in the office are still on call. So if they are called in, they earn a daily rate on top of the percentage of salary that they're still earning. And then we're using Microsoft Teams as well to engage with team members. So we are still a team. And I think, as Murtaza rightly said, it's how you treat people now that will guarantee the future of your organization. And just because we're not all together in the office, and it was a really sad day when we all said goodbye, it doesn't mean that we don't have that unity. So we have to maintain the culture that we have built over the years. It's challenging, but it's necessary.
Thank you, Miranda. And I guess it is, times like these which bring out our character. We say, leaders are made in crisis. So I guess being leaders already, this is a kind of a rub and a polish to sort of make us shine even more. And, ponder on things which we really would not have pondered on aspects of leadership, which if we hadn't actually come across this crisis. So thank you very much, Murtaza and Miranda, for sharing those. And Araika, I'll come to you for just a quick summation of maybe leadership, vulnerability, and how in times like these, when we are vulnerable is when we are expected to show our strength to the maximum, but we are at our most vulnerable. How do we sort of connect the dots here and use, well, I wouldn't say use, but sort of are able to show our vulnerability and reach out to people as well, and not expected to be like, superhuman beings who are not affected by crisis and very smoothly can just lead our team and our organizations. How can we sort of show our vulnerability and yet remain strong?
Wow, that's such a great question. First of all, thank you, everyone. I was just listening so intently and like learning as much as I can. I think that these are such interesting times. And I think, Murtaza, you mentioned this previously when we were talking about authenticity. I think you talked about authenticity. Miranda, you talked about it as well when we're talking about whether, like, when men can show vulnerability in this time. And I think that the labels that we've put before on things like vulnerability are the problem, not what vulnerability is itself, right? And I think that when we are going through the beautiful thing about going through a crisis, if there is a beautiful thing, the positive is that all of these fake pillars and labels that we have put onto our lives and that society has imposed on us have crumbled, right? We can no longer hide this. It doesn't matter if you're rich, Corona will get you. It doesn't matter if you're, you know what I mean? Like, it's like all of these things that we hid behind have crumbled. And so when we have a situation where everyone is forced into a collective vulnerability, right? That is the only truth. It is the only way to be. There's nothing that you can do right now that you can pretend to not be vulnerable. It's almost like that's the being fake, right? And the authenticity that we used to push to the side because we want to fit into all of these societal expectations, that's what's key right now. That's what everyone wants to see. That's what brings everyone together. And like Miranda, you said, it's so shocking, or that you were surprised how well people took the salary cuts, for example, because you'd think that, oh no, this is such bad news. But because you come at it from such an authentic angle, and because that's the only way to be right now, people are forced to just be people. There's nothing more. Like, we're just all people. And so I feel like when we're going through a crisis and we're thinking about vulnerability, not just in leadership, in our lives, in the way that we are, like from the moment we wake up until we go to sleep, just to remember that there is nothing more. All of the pillars that we were holding on to before have all crumbled. Like, there's nothing left than to be authentic, especially if you're gonna die tomorrow. Right? Like, all of this stuff, like, true authenticity is when you read what people say on their deathbed, right? Because that's when there's nothing else. I'm dying, I've lost everything. So if you think about the fact that we're all living with death outside our door, what else is there to do than to be authentic? And and when we were talking about filling our cups and all of that, like, that falls into authenticity, because you can no longer ignore yourself. Right? You can no longer pretend, like, you can no longer live certain labels. Like when Miranda, you were saying, I'm a soldier. And so you have to go. There's nothing like that now. Like, even wars have taken a hold right now, right? Because it's like, there's nothing more than the human experience. But what's great is that as we're living through the human experience, we are also recognizing that there has never been anything else but the human experience, right? And so, like, so many things that we were attached to were never real. It's stuff that we made up. And you start to realize that like we never needed an office to be a team. We never needed like clients to still have the purpose and the passion that we have to do the work that we do, you know? And so I think that's maybe the beauty and the positive that comes from this. And so I don't think the strength is something that we're building. I think the strength is in that vulnerability. And it was within all along. The strength was coming back to who you've always been, to what the human experience is. And I'm sorry to have gotten very philosophical, but that's how my mind works, I guess. But yeah, so I think at the end of the day, the positive to take away, or the key takeaway that I will put out there, is to remember that human experience was never something you had to work for. Happiness is never something you had to achieve, right? Like, as horrible as these times are, if you can crack up with a friend, like laugh wholeheartedly, because it's something you're still capable of doing. There's no rules that are preventing you from being happy. There's no rules that are preventing you from trying to grow, trying to achieve things, trying to fall in love. Like, the human experience is all there is, right? So yeah.
Amen, amen. Hugs from afar.
Thank you, Araika. Honestly, you've just brought so many different perspectives that I think I need to listen to this recording and really think deeply. Are you sure you are not a philosopher as well? Because these are some really, really amazing concepts and perspectives which really need further reflection and thought. So thank you so much, Araika, for that really, really wonderful, you know, sharing so many different perspectives which really hadn't crossed at least my mind to, you know, look at things from that angle. We'll take one last question. And I know we've run out of time, but we have one question, if that's okay with the panelists, to stay for a further few minutes. Yeah, would that be okay? Okay, so I have a question for Araika, which says, considering we know that mortality is at 1%, how do we talk about bereavement and deal with it? Araika, I think your mic is on mute.
Oh, no, sorry. Can you clarify the question a little bit?
Okay,
what do they mean by mortality is at 1%?
Well, I would think, considering that maybe mortality rates are higher at present, how do we talk about bereavement and also deal with it?
Okay. Well, personally, I think that, like, okay, when we go back to, again, this whole concept of death, right? And I just did a webinar on dealing with anxiety around death and around COVID-19. And it's, to me, how I look at it is go back to what you can control. Like, you're living, right? You're living right now. You have air in your lungs right now. You've woken up another day. And I know this is coming off as a motivational speech, but at the end of the day, that's all there is, right? So if we're gonna sit and worry so much about death and the rising rates of mortality and exposing ourselves to news all the time that is negative, when we already know that this is stuff that is happening, the only thing that you're doing is living through it twice. As horrible as that sounds, right? If you're going to die, you're going to die. And the funny thing about death is we've always known we were going to die. It's just that now we're aware it's a little bit closer to home. That makes us a little anxious. It makes us, you know, uncertain about what's going to happen tomorrow. But if you go back to yourself again, you realize you never knew what was going to happen tomorrow anyways. You know, you could have walked out and got hit by a car anyways. So like, if you think of it this way, it's harder to focus on the negative because you can't control it. And the more and more we think about things we can't control, like death, the more it is that you're going through it when you don't need to, and then you go through it when you have to as well. So what's the point? Do you know what I mean? And I mean, I hope that answers the question. But yeah.
Yes, I hope so too. It's answered for me.
Okay.
And so if there are no further questions, we'll call it a day. Thank you very much everyone who attended. I really hope it was beneficial. It was helpful. It was inspiring. We tried to keep it simple, informal, and real. I hope you enjoyed and you have something to take away and something which you can further chew on. And a really heartfelt thank you to Miranda, Araika, and Murtaza for sparing some time on a holiday. I know every day is a holiday. These days we're at home, but still, at least you wouldn't be having to work from home, and you had a day to relax, but you chose some time to spend with us. Thank you, really. Thank you so much. Okay. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Atiya.
Thank you. Thank you, Atiya. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye. I didn't realize I didn't mute. Bye, everyone.
Bye.